Okay.
Sorry, I turned that off. You can make a motion to postpone it to a certain date, so it does not have to be the very next meeting.
Okay. Well, in discussion, would it be better at this point to postpone to, say, the first meeting in January to give us time to, everybody stay healthy? Council can't go anywhere. Council's family can't go anywhere. We'll have time to digest. I don't have that date handy. 14th?
January 11th.
Would be the January 11th. Is that something that we
don't just do it on the 28th, if everybody's going to be here. This is.
Well, my concern on the 28th is if we go the Zoom route, I'm not sure we're able to do this part. So we would probably be safe by having it be the 11th. What is your advice, Megan?
It's hard to say when exactly we'll be safe and when we'll have a full house given the pandemic situation. So just based on everything you've heard tonight, if you would like additional time to consider it and digest the information, you personally, if you would like that, you can make that motion and then council can vote on your motion and we can see if you get a second. And then if not, you or another member can make a motion to postpone to the 28th.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, I think for right now.
Are we not able to actually finish the public hearing and ask questions?
You can ask staff questions, certainly. But, once there's a motion on the table, you can still have discussion after a motion.
And what we could do is pick up here. If we met again on the 11th, we could still again open it up to the public, right? Would we be able to do that?
Yeah, yes, you can reopen the public hearing at any time if there's new information presented. And I was looking at our applicant representatives on your idea of the 11th. I know that some of them have, the sellers have expectations, I'll say, in terms of timeline. So I'm.
Is there a reason we can't try to do the 28th?
We try the 28th.
Do it. I mean, I know Renee still has some questions. How are we? But I mean, if we go back to having all 7, you don't always have all 7 here, but on something this important, I'd love to see that. You never know who, unfortunately, could come down with it next.
Yeah.
But, if we're going to do it, let's do it. Try to do it the next meeting. I don't want to push it back any farther than we have to.
Well, my only concern was with the 28th was if we meet via Zoom, are we able to do this?
Let's just do it. Let's be here still.
Okay, all right.
Go to Zoom, we'll do it again.
Okay, good. So I would.
Well, if people are still sick, Zoom might be a great way of getting everybody to be able to vote.
I was just saying if we can do it, Renee. Yeah.
The only thing I'm concerned about right here is that we have a lot of people from the public who came here to speak and ask some questions that they want follow-up from, and if you didn't hear any relevant ones, I can replay a few of them.
Well, no, I mean,
I want to have the public hearing while people are here.
I think, yes, and I think that some of the comments have been made before, and so I think some of them are not necessarily specific to the project at hand. A lot of the impact fee are like a broader topic, or talking about West Side Master Plan. There's a lot of people who weren't participating in the West Side Master Plan, so they don't necessarily understand it and have questions about it. So those are broader topics. So that's what I guess I meant. There's certainly a lot of information that's been shared and questions that have been raised, but they're maybe 10,000 level questions instead of the project specific questions. There are a handful of comments that were made specific to the project. So just a quick question. Megan was trying to, I think, comment on the, okay, all right. So I guess you could, as was discussed, you could make a motion to continue to whichever meeting. We can try for the 28th.
Let's shoot for the 28th. I'll amend my motion to say I would like to make a motion to pick up where we are, but give the public that's here an opportunity to speak, anyone who sends an email in an opportunity to speak, to the 28th, our next meeting.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Nope.
No second. Okay, so motion fails, and we'll move on.
So we close the public hearing.
So
You can make another motion.
Do you have a question? Renee, with it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's go.
I'd like to have the public hearing done before
Yes, ma'am.
deciding whether we're going to vote or not.
Well, excuse me, I think the public hearing was closed, but you're still having a public discussion. So the public hearing is when people get up to come and speak. So even if a motion is made, the council can make a discussion. So it's maybe semantics, but we're still, I mean, from our perspective, we're still having a public discussion about the project. So
Okay.
whether there's a motion or not.
I heard some relevant questions being brought up during the comments. One of the follow-up questions that I have specifically about Barnett's Crossing is the age restriction provision. At the Planning Commission, that did unanimously approve it. There were certain representations of what this community was going to look like, and I think a lot of people like the potential of some of the things that are occurring. But Mr. Sheehy brought up during his first attempt at public comments and then also during the hearing some questions about, first of all, the impact of students. He brought up some different numbers in terms of how many school-age children would actually be attending because he pointed out some things about the age restriction that...
Renee, they can't hear.
Oh.
Sorry.
I don't know how much closer I can be at this thing.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. But Mr. Sheehy brought up the points that there indeed could be more school-age children than with a 55 age limit, that indeed there's not going to be the kinds of protections, first of all, for how many students are going to be produced by this particular development, but also with respect to how impactful that age restriction is in terms of the terms of the development agreement. I think the points that he brought up do deserve some comment from.
Sure. So we had attached to the Planning Commission staff report, which you all received, a copy of the draft HOA provisions. And so it's correct, the development agreement references the age restriction. The development agreement also references the fact that the city gets to review and sign off on the HOA covenants. And the HOA covenants are much more specific about the fact that nobody under the age of 18 is allowed to live in the project. There is an exception for mentally or disabled individuals that are under the age of 18. And so those HOA, that draft was attached to the Planning Commission staff report, and that's why we've represented to you that we are not expecting much in the way of any school-age children in the project.
So in terms of the development agreement, it's one person that's age restricted, right? So Mr. Sheehy, for example, I don't want to reveal your age, but
He already stated his age,
right,
but yes.
you have students who are in school. There could be a lot of Sheehy families moving in, and they would meet the requirements of the age restriction.
Mr. Sheehy wouldn't be allowed to live there with his school-age children unless one of them was disabled and met that definition. Now, he could choose to live in the part of the project that was 68 single-family homes. That's not restricted, but in the townhome portion, he would not be allowed to live there. Even though he met the age, school-age children wouldn't be allowed.
If the HOA agreement is actually passed that we don't control.
Well, we're not going to approve it if it doesn't comply with the draft that they provided us. And if it's not approved, they don't get to record it. So we would be reviewing that. And their attorney is here if you want her to come and speak.
And only one person has to be 55. Let's say Mr.
Correct.
He has married a woman who's 30.
Right.
They start over and have kids. The fact that he's 55, he would not be eligible to live in that one part.
Well, there are provisions that the developer has to deal with, and in that scenario, if something were to happen, and again, their attorney can speak to that. But we spent a bit of time talking with the developer about this to make sure we didn't have this kind of scenario, because we didn't want to misrepresent to you what our understanding of this project was, or this component of the project.
I also went and spoke with Megan about this because I was concerned also because it's not in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the covenants.
Yes.
We have to take it on faith, or does that then come for us and we vote on that again based on the covenants?
The covenants will be reviewed by the attorney's office and the planning department to make sure that the covenants are doing what the project is supposed to do in terms of the age restriction in part. And so we will review that. And that's I'll say fairly standard practice that the covenants, if they're going to be reviewed, would be reviewed at the staff level. And if we agree to them, then the developer can go forward and get them recorded. But yes, that is and that's why we asked the developer for a sample of the covenants related to this issue, and we attached it to the Planning Commission staff report that you all received.
So you're saying that they would not come back before the council?
The covenants wouldn't get reviewed by council. I mean, we can certainly provide them to you. I mean, that's fine, but that's sort of an administrative kind of follow-up item that I don't know of any jurisdiction that brings covenants, but we can certainly provide them to you for information.
Well, some of that would almost go along with what many times Gary does with maintenance agreements. When they're bringing a subdivision in, we ask him each and every time, do they meet the requirements that they signed up for on the front end? And each time Gary says yes or knows not to bring it to us. In your case, you could kind of do the same thing. Did they meet the requirements that they were signed up for before, and let council know, even though normally it's not brought before them on this one, if they're specifically requesting that, we could do that, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah. And just as a note, the city typically doesn't review covenants at all, but we've started including in a couple of development agreements where we want to make sure that those HOA provisions that they're covering, what we're requiring in the project. So we've got 2 of them where the development agreement requires the developer to give us the HOA provisions before they're finalized so we can make sure that they're addressing what they need to.
So who approves the HOA agreement what entity is approving?
Well, typically a developer will, the developer is the HOA, right, president until they hand it off.
Right.
And so the covenants typically would get recorded, right? But we're saying that before those can get finalized and recorded, before they're representing to buyers that these are your CC&Rs, that we have to review them. And that would be the legal department and the planning department will be reviewing them to make sure that the portions that we care about, right, and in this case, the age restriction provision is covered and provided for. And if it's not, then we wouldn't agree to have the covenants, and the developer's going to have to work to correct that before they could finalize them.
So in the development agreement, it says that the city will review and approve the covenants?
I believe so, yeah. I don't think I have the, let me see if I have the DA with me.
It just says that the developer will submit the covenants to the city just for the purpose of determining whether the developer has complied with the agreement and providing for an age-restricted community according to the Fair Housing Act provisions. And the city is not responsible for getting into the weeds of editing those or promulgating them, as we say, and adding additions. And it's also not in the business of enforcing them. And so that's basically the extent of the city's review of those.
But if the developer then said, well, I'm not doing it, then what recourse does the city have at that point?
Well, we would say that they were in default of the development agreement and in terms of what the, how the project was approved. And so then we're not going to agree to them.
A stop work order? I mean, what would
they wouldn't,
They wouldn't get building.
They wouldn't get building permits because that has to be done before they pull any kind of permit. We're really trying to protect, the intent. I mean, we would not be here representing something that we didn't think we could, enforce. And
just trying to understand.
No, I appreciate it. They're all good questions, but that's why we did also ask the developer for the example of the HOA restrictions.
So the language that Megan quoted, I looked at that as well, and it seemed to be a little loose in terms of what we could do. But are you telling us that if those covenants change, like you review one, but then when it comes time to recording it, a term changes, who's going to catch it? before and it's passed and the zoning is done?
Before the zoning is done?
No, I mean, we change the zoning. If we approve the zoning change or we allow this to occur, but then you've seen the HOA agreement, but a term changes before it is recorded.
A term changes to make it not in compliance with the development agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
no, the development agreement does not talk about some of the restrictions that are in the covenant. It intentionally cannot.
right.
So the developer, well, I was going to say, once we sign off on it, the HOA restrictions, and the developer would record that, we'll get a final version of the recorded document for our file. We'll double check it to make sure that what they've actually finalized and are representing is what we approved.
Right.
If there is a problem, again, we can hold building permits because they're not complying with the intent of what was approved.
Because they'll record the covenants, we can go back and check the recordings in the probate office to see if there are any changes ahead of releasing any building permits.
Okay.
And we have no problem doing that.
The only other follow-up question from the previous emails after the last work session that I had was trying to keep track of the current rooftops in Madison, understanding where we're at now, what both of these developments would add to that. I don't think you've had a chance to answer that question yet.
I haven't, I guess, put together a tally other than what we've been doing since the growth policy was adopted is as we haven't had that many projects come forward, but what we have been doing is going back and looking, were these numbers anticipated as part of the overall growth projections, right? And that's usually a question that gets asked at our planning commission meeting, did we anticipate these units? And so we have been doing that to make sure that so by definition, if a project or development on a parcel was anticipated as part of those growth projections, then we're still within that envelope, right? And we did a pretty detailed accounting when we did the land use analysis related to the transportation plan, which we then used for the growth committee work. At that time in 2017, we had 18,859 housing units approximately. You probably have that number instilled. And so, and we know based upon the number of certificate of occupancies we've issued, right? We talked about that last time, right? It's on average about 340 a year, and it varied. So we can add to that 18,859 in terms of that. So we can come up with that number, and it's something that we can do to track. We just haven't done it yet. In terms of it, like if you're wanting a table, I think that we know when a certificate of occupancy is issued. We obviously know when a building permit is issued, but there can take 6 to 8 months before a house is finalized. And until it's occupied, it's not really impacting the system, if you will. So probably tracking by C of O makes the most sense. So I don't know if you're wanting a table, or when we bring something to the planning commission that we're reporting it. That would be helpful to know what would be helpful to you.
Yeah, I'd like us to just build from the number we did in the growth impact study. Start at that 18,859 3 years ago, add the rooftops, and let me have a tally.
Yeah.
So that I know.
Okay.
And the other thing is that, and to the point of number of speakers tonight, nobody can hear me. To the point that is being made by a number of the speakers this evening, that if we could have a comprehensive plan of where we're trying to get to, it's easier then to understand, okay, and then if we add these two, what does that put our total tally at? And if we've already maxed out what we can fit into our elementary schools, for example, then we need to make really sure these are the ones we want to bring in, because we don't know what other perhaps mixed use development that might have some commercial with residential. Maybe that's a better development. And so we need to be a little more selective if we're running out of space, if we're trying to hit a certain target number. So it would be very helpful to know where we're at in terms of current rooftops, and then as each development is coming in, what that's going to put us to, more than we can see in terms of school capacity. From the charts that Mr. Sheehy shared with us tonight, it's looking like elementary is really the pressure point in terms of what it is that we're able. No sooner are we going to be able to open this new elementary school, and if we keep approving these developments, we're going to need another one, or at least in addition to Horizon, in order. That's the only school that we could add on to, so it would help.
Ms. Bartlett, I spoke with Dr. Nichols today, and he told me, I asked him the question about how are these developments going to impact our schools. And he told me if these two developments are passed, that our elementary schools will be maxed out, that any other additions to the city would require an addition. He did mention the fact that they have even looked at adding on to Heritage Elementary, which would make it a huge elementary school, to the order of 1,200 students, which is a massive elementary school. So this is, I mean, if these two developments are passed, are approved, then we have maxed out our elementary schools in the city, including the new elementary.
On that same note, I'm so confused because I went and spent 2 hours in Dr. Nichols' office like 2 weeks ago on these same things. And he tells me right there in his office that these aren't going to hurt us. Go ahead and move forward on them. So I'm so confused on when I think I'm in tune with our school system, and I always try to do right. He tells you one thing, and maybe he didn't tell you not to vote, or maybe he was telling you that. But when I go talk to him, he's telling me to move forward. So that's where you talk. It's so confusing to be in this seat.
Well, I think a bigger piece is, where are the schools tonight?
And
that's my problem.
Maybe we need to have a joint work session.
They're not here.
And maybe
schools are fine with what we've done. We came up, I think it's a great point that somebody made, was where's your vision? In 2016, we came in, and the vision was we do not have the funding for the schools that we need. Let's figure out what we need to do to make sure we keep the number one asset, in addition to the proximity to this Tennessee Valley, to people's work. Let's put a vision in place, and we work together as a team to accomplish that, passed a property tax that now gives us the chance to grow into what was already defined. The schools aren't here saying don't do this. They've said it was part of the plan, we understand. You guys are doing that, which we understand it's a managed growth requirement. But the other thing somebody said in here was, let's stop and pause, which we did in 2016. We haven't annexed any major pieces of land into the city of Madison since 2016. We've done that. And then the last thing, and I guess the most concerning to me, is when I hear somebody say that we're bleeding and coming apart. I know that was you, but that's it. Just, and I go, oh my gosh, the schools right now have $8 million more per year to spend than the tax revenues that are set aside for them are. We give them $8 million, or they have $8 million to spend on capital projects that are needed. In addition, which additions will be possibly Horizon or Heritage or any of those. We've worked together with Dr. Nichols. And then lastly, what has virtual and COVID done to what people are going to do in the schools? I can tell you right now, and you've had the discussions, Renee's had the discussions, it's going to change how schools are done. And Dr. Nichols and his team have a plan that's different from when you guys were on the school board even 4 months ago, based on what's happened. Schools aren't here. They're fine with moving forward with this. They also ask us to continue to manage growth and use our growth policy. And I think we've done a good job of pausing, stopping, getting to this point. And then I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen from here. But, you know, I go back to these guys played by the rules. Both of these developers worked with our planning department using the rules that were in place with a policy that was put and defined and approved by the school board. So the discussion to me is critical and important, but the city is not falling apart and coming apart at the seams. We have $17 million in the bank just in case, with all these projects that Mary Beth talked about going on, a community that trusted itself with a plan that was in place, and they voted with a 70% approval rating to raise their property tax to build those schools so we could continue to manage and grow in a managed way. So I think there's a lot of possibility in doing things differently, but the schools have $8 million a year right now over what the taxes that were put in place for them, and they're using it in the ways that they see that are judicious to making things positive for our students. So I think they're really good questions, but the missing piece tonight is what everybody's, don't ruin our schools. The schools aren't here. The schools have told Greg and I both, and you guys will be fine in managing this.
And I think we're really adhering to the growth policy, as the mayor said, that was adopted, in joint consultation and discussion with the district. We have not, deviated from the overall projections in terms of, as the committee, the city landed, and we have held the line. I mean, I think the council, the planning commission, and then staff is your front line. We've really held the line in not bringing forward a project that didn't check the boxes for the growth policy. And trust me, we don't get 6 calls a day or whatever somebody said it was, but we do frequently get inquiries about prospective development in the city. And we have no problem in saying, we don't think this would be supported. We don't think it would be successful. We don't think it would be a good fit for Madison. It's not consistent with the growth policy. We've come up with lots of different ways to convey the same information because, frankly, we don't want to waste anybody's time. And we certainly are trying to abide by the growth policy. And so, we do think, we agree, and for the development that we've got here right now that we're talking about, they have attempted to do and have worked in good faith. I think with the rules that are in place when they started this process, and having the Planning Commission, which is the land use advisory body to the council, unanimously support this project says a lot. And they certainly have heard all of the concerns about growth over the years. Many of them participated, or almost all of them participated in the West Side Master Plan. We had 16 different meetings on the West Side Master Plan. We had school board representatives. I mean, there was a lot of input into that plan. And it's understandable when you've got people who might be newer to the community that didn't participate in that process. We advertised it in the newspaper. We had the Record write an article about getting people to be involved. We really tried to involve everybody in that project. And it's understandable, though, when people were not part of that process and they're coming in late, that somehow they think we've missed something or we haven't tried to engage them. And it's a learning curve, and we understand that. And so we're from the position of, well, we did engage. We had all of these meetings. We did talk to people in terms of talking about the bigger picture. There was buy-off. We went to the Planning Commission. We went to the council. We involved the school district. And so we think we did the right thing in terms of, figuring out the West Side. People's minds change. New people come into the community and have a different perspective. And that it's an organic process. And that's the challenge, right, with planning and with governing. It is very dynamic and organic. And we're just at that kind of position right now, it seems, based upon the commentary. But again, we do think for this particular project that they have played by the rules that were laid out, that were adopted by the city council in terms of the growth policy. They listened, they modified their project, and they got the full support of the Planning Commission. And so that's why, as staff, we are still supporting it. We do think that we've got checks in place to ensure that concerns about age restriction will be addressed. I think we've talked about fire response. There's more than one entrance that will serve ultimately this project with the Greenbrier Hills once that connection is done. We talked about that at the last meeting, right? You can only get so far with permits until the access points are there. And so, we are asking for your support. If you're inclined to continue it to the December 28th meeting, that's fine too. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I did. I had an email from someone that lives in the Greenbrier Hills. They're very concerned with the traffic that is going to be coming into their streets because so much, if you add 200 cars at least, coming in through there, they're concerned with the safety. They say it's already a problem with the number of cars now. Okay, then you've got the construction that's going on. That's a problem. Now they're thinking you're going to have more construction coming through. Are there any ways to mitigate that so it is not so bad for the people? Is it always going to be coming in through Greenbrier Hills for the development?
So we have, Jason, could you put that PowerPoint back up, please? Thank you. Let me see if I can find the right slide that I'm looking for right here. So as we talked, I think it was at the last meeting, we have, I'll come back here for you. So this is the cobblestone subdivision. There's going to be a road that goes from Greenbrier Hills into Cobblestone, as well as, we've got this road out to Hardeman. This project will have 2 connection points into the Greenbrier Hills subdivision. One of the things that sometimes can happen is construction traffic can get routed a certain way to minimize impacts. I don't want to minimize it at all, but and I know you've attended a lot of planning commission meetings and you've heard people talk to the planning commission about this particular issue. It's part of that process of subdivision development. I know, our engineering staff really tries to work with developers on a traffic control plan to make sure that issues are minimized. There's only so much that we can do. We ask the developer and their contractors to be good neighbors, and Gary's staff certainly polices that a bit when they're out doing their inspections.
Mary Beth, one of the things also on this that I think a lot of people brought up tonight that's a really good point. If you were coming back out, going back to County Line on Hardeman, it is absolutely going to add traffic. One missing piece, however, is if you go west out of the subdivision down to Seegers, down to Old Highway 20, within the span of about 6 months, you're going to have a 5-lane road that dumps into County Line Road. I mean, those guys are going to be golden on the backside here with a road that, supports
Correct.
Mazda, Toyota, and is going to be 5-lane. So traffic, in many instances is going to come back the other way to County Line in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
In that same letter, they mentioned the problem with water pressure. It's already more in their area.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be worse once we add this subdivision. What can you say to that?
So we've talked with Limestone County Water and Sewer about that, and we meet with them on a monthly basis just to talk about projects, and Gary attends that meeting. Mark attends that meeting. And so Limestone County has been out doing, improving connections, and they have, I think, one more improvement that they're doing out there. Gary might want to speak to that a little bit more, but they didn't see it as being an issue. And
But the homeowner.
I understand, but because they're in the process of doing improvements on the pipe, I don't know, Gary, do you want to add anything? Yeah.
Okay, but they said they're still having issues. So they're concerned if you add this, are they going to even have worse issues?
What they're going to be doing, and the ultimate, as part of that 12-inch main, is you've got 3 Park Preserve to the north. And so as 3 Park Preserve develops, there's going to be a loop in the system, which is going to ultimately improve the pressure. So the first phase of 3 Park Preserve is, they're getting pretty close, I think, to coming forward with a final plat, and then that will improve the system. So the way that Limestone County Water and Sewer, when they were, let's see if I got a better image. well, you can kind of see the 3 Park Preserve there at the north, but the way that they, I guess I'll say master planned it is, because 3 Park Preserve has been approved for a little while, is they were having the water line came down, and when this project came through, they identified how it would loop around. So again, they think the water pressure situation is going to improve, and they felt that they planned for it. So there are, and this kind of gets to, I'm sorry, I can't remember which one of you brought it up, but I think it was you, Ms. Denzine. There are, well, it was a speaker, Ms. Bauer, there, are fundamental things that we do as part of a technical review of a site plan or a plat. Are there utilities there? Can you, provide fire service? And we have a technical review team that is our planning staff, our fire department staff, Madison Utilities, Limestone County and Water and Sewer get our plans if it's a project out there. Our building staff get involved if they need to, engineer, and we go through those plans. We spend about 2 weeks doing a very detailed review of the plans, and then we all get together, now mostly virtually, as a group and kind of talk about those plans from a technical standpoint, to make sure that there are going to be services in place, to make sure that we don't have those issues. And then we relay all of those comments, which sometimes are voluminous, to an applicant to make sure that they can technically satisfy our requirements, or North Alabama gas requirements, or Limestone County water requirements. We don't just get a plan in and then just pass it along. It goes through a pretty detailed gauntlet, a very detailed construction level review. So all of the departments take, any kind of a project very seriously, because, we wouldn't want to live in a project that was underserved.
Also, I was talking to Gary when I was looking at the highest and best use of this property. It really should be industrial based on the railroad and that sort of thing. But I was told it wasn't, because back in the day, they did not want to build the road, and the road systems are not good enough for industrial property back.
I can't speak to the specifics of that. And back in the day, I don't think I was there, but Gary could always, obviously, if you see a railroad, you think, well, it might make sense to be industrial. I think, I don't know why the road was built or not built, but certainly putting any type of business on that property does not make sense, given the land use decisions that have already been made, or the road decisions that have already been made. I don't know any residents of Greenbrier Hills that would want industry on that property.
No, but it is zoned on the other side of the railroad track in Huntsville as industrial, right?
It is, on the south side of the tracks.
Right. So
They've got some, let me just go to that slide, Ms. Denzine. Actually, directly south is in the city of Madison, is zoned agriculture. But south of you see the green area? So that's city of Madison, that's zoned for agriculture. But south of that, the white box is unincorporated, it's in the county, and then the pink is in the city of Huntsville. And yes, some of the city of Huntsville is zoned industrial.
okay. So I guess my concern is for these people that would be down in that bottom section, what kind of sound mitigation, noise mitigation? I've been over there as a train has gone by.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder I have asked the developer and I did not find out an answer.
Okay.
What is being done that will really improve quality of life if I am living next to, I put myself there and I'm like, okay, if I was living there, what would I feel? Would I feel it's too noisy or not? So I am just asking the question, what is being done?
Mm-hmm. Well, at the zoning level, we don't typically get into that level of detail, but they, as part of their conceptual plan, they are showing a 50-foot buffer. As you recall from the Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission wanted to make sure that within that 50 feet, at least 20 feet was set aside for a future possible greenway or parkway, or well, I'll call it a greenway. And outside of that 20 feet, the rest of that 50 feet area could be landscaped. So in other words, we'd want to make sure that it's graded so that 20 feet of it could be a walkway at some point agency wanted to put in a greenway. But then the other 30 feet could be heavily landscaped. And beyond that, because we're just talking at the zoning level, we haven't had any other detailed conversations. With the developer. I will say, in general, because of our climate here, and you have air-conditioned homes, and in order to meet energy requirements, homes all have double-paned windows, and all of those, the fact that you're going to have an enclosed system, if you will, with double-pane windows, helps with noise attenuation. When the project comes forward at a preliminary plat stage to the Planning Commission, assuming we get to that point, that's certainly something that, we can explore more. But even at the plat stage, the plat stage is when they go in and they construct their infrastructure, right? They're not actually building a home. But we could certainly follow up and see if they plan any additional noise attenuation measures at that time.
I mean, we are rezoning it for this subdivision, so I don't want to just skip and go, we'll wait till then to even talk about.
I understand. We only have so much reach with zoning in terms of, what we can do. I know the developer is aware that you had asked the question, and I have, not had a chance to have any specific conversation with him if they plan anything other than regular noise attenuation measures, which all projects would include. But 50 feet of a separation with at least 30 of that being heavily landscaped is very significant and is much greater than what pretty much anybody has in Madison if they've got residential next to the railroad. So we're not expecting that to be an issue.
Mary Beth, I think I know the answer to this, but I was not able to attend the Planning Commission meeting on Barnett's Crossing.
Okay.
I was able to attend the last one on Bellawoods. So did anyone come to the Planning Commission meeting from the school system or the residents in Madison saying, yes, please add this?
Nobody came and asked, yes, please add this. That never happens.
Yeah, that was Grant's point earlier.
Well, I've worked in a number of communities, and nobody ever says, yes, please add this for a residential project. It does not happen.
Right. And so I think
that doesn't mean it's not right to
I think it's kind of a false argument to say, where are the schools tonight? Because I don't see them here saying this is a good idea either. And I don't think it's really fair to put them in that position. They deal with whatever it is we zone in. And I am painfully aware of what it's like when you stand up and say, don't do something. I've done it. It's not an easy position to be in. I think that we're the adults in the room, and we're the ones who are supposed to plan for the very best use we can find to the property that we have left. And that really is our job. And I would appreciate the rooftop numbers whenever you're able.
Yeah, I did a rough calculation. So we're probably right around 20,000 right now, but I can get you a more precise number. But I was just adding up numbers as
that's my rough calculation as well. But I'd love to have the official number, and then I'd like to keep the tally. I think that is our responsibility.
Sure. And again, we are, as staff, we are tracking it. And if it's something you want us to report out periodically, we're happy to do that. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Please send that to all of us.
Oh, sure, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I've got on the questions on Barnett.
I only had one more. And it had to do with the development of the area to be walking and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just so I'm clear, it is half a mile around?
Oh, you mean the walking trail?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be a
plan for them.
Okay.
Area. What exactly does that look like, and what is the developer putting into that to make it a benefit to the city?
Okay. Let's go. I think that's the best exhibit. So what we required in the development agreement is a minimum of a half a mile, and we came up with that based upon just the physical boundaries, if you will, of the property. I actually think it will end up being a little bit longer than that when it's said and done. I'll show you on the map in just a moment. But it is a minimum of, I think we put in 10, or you've got the development agreement handy, but 10 or 12 feet wide. And I'm sorry, I should have looked at that tonight before I came in. So it's a minimum of 10. It might be 12 feet because that's our standard greenway. You usually do 10 to 12 feet because that's what a vehicle can drive on for maintenance purposes. And so where it will run is, this is this little green space would be a pedestrian, little greens patch. So you could come out from the subdivision, it would come out here, and come up this way. And what we're expecting is it's going to come around here and then tie in with this cul-de-sac right here. So kind of a loop. And I'm going to add 2 other pieces, I guess. There's a sewer line that is going to come from this cul-de-sac and go up north to 3 Park Preserve. Let me do it over here so the public can see. So there's a sewer line that will run from this cul-de-sac and go up north to 3 Park Preserve. And so when we talked about the conceptual plan at the Planning Commission meeting, well, actually we were talking about the layout. The commissioner, I think it was Chair Weston, asked if they'd be able to also have a little pathway connect up to 3 Park Preserve. And so we're going to look into that, whether or not that's feasible. That corner of 3 Park Preserve is actually wetlands. It's a little mucky. So whether or not it makes sense to have that be a landing, we don't know, but we will explore that. And then the other thing I'll add is that, let me get to an aerial. Sorry. I think I have an aerial. So this right here is where Madison Utilities has a sewer line existing. I'll do it on this side too. So they have a sewer line right here. And so people from Oxford subdivision already walk down that area. You can kind of see in the aerial, must have been in summertime, but you can see right here, there's a little bit of a walking path. So people are naturally walking there. And so the developer will be required to do their minimum half mile, but then depending upon, city resources and things like that, we might be able to, put a little branch to connect to the informal path that got out of the Oxford subdivision. So we think that there's a lot of opportunity to expand upon what the developer has to do. And then the Greenway path along the railroad, that's just a, what if the Singing River Trail Network is able to, get enough property along that side of the railroad and they could do something, or some other entity would do something. We're not requiring the developer to install that 20-foot wide. You're just setting aside the land for that because it would need to really connect to something to make any difference.
Is there going to be any access to the public to enjoy this area, or is it just primarily for the people?
Sure. All of the city streets are, in this area are all public streets. Anybody can go and park on a street. So the 3 Park Preserve, you may remember, they have along their spine road, they have an expanded right-of-way, and they've got effectively a greenway that runs along the spine road of 3 Park Preserve. So from Hardeman Road to the end of 3 Park Preserve. So the public can use that. The public will be able to come into this subdivision and park and walk on the Greenway Trail. People who are in Oxford subdivision, if they're doing that, kind of de facto path, will be able to access it. So there's a public access easement that will, be on this pathway that the developer has to build. They may ultimately dedicate that area, the whole 40 acres that's going to stay as ag, to the city. We don't know if they will. They don't have to do that. I mean, they can't develop it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for public to benefit.
All right. Are there any other questions? All right. I guess Mara had put a motion on that we would postpone this or continue this to the 28th. Is there a second for that, or is there? All right, no second.
Are you able to second or no?
What now?
The chair second?
Yes.
Well, somebody could make a motion to approve it.
Yeah, well,
Okay, continuation is fine.
Let's go to a vote. Go to a vote.
okay.
So now since we're not that, we'll go to a vote on,
Well,
Somebody's gonna
that's okay.
go for anything.
No, you don't have to.
Nobody moves, then nobody moves to do anything, what happens there?
Melanie, do we have a motion on the table originally from the time that it was continued?
No motion.
Okay.
No, I don't think
Then
so.
we will need a motion and second to proceed to a vote
Or to continue.
or to continue. Yes. So, I'm sorry. We had.
So,
Was there going to be a motion on the continuance to the 28th? Or
No.
had the motion? Was anyone going to second, or
there's no second.
you were not going to second either?
There's no
Okay.
second on that.
So
okay. This part.
I would prefer, this is just me, I don't want to take advantage of a situation because we have two council members who couldn't be here. What I think would be better is if we could have an assurance that we could find a way for them to be able to vote via Zoom. I had actually suggested that for this evening so that people could.
it's tough.
Per state law, Megan said today, per state law, we can't vote on Zoom for these type of
Right.
actions.
Right. So the general legal principle is that the council, for a quorum, and anyone who wants to vote on council has to be physically present. And so there's only one exception in the Open Meetings Act for if you have members of a governing body that are residing in 2 or more counties. So everybody here lives in Madison County, so that's not an option. When the pandemic started, the governor came out with some guidance that said Zoom meetings are an option under only 2 scenarios. One is if you're actually voting on things to respond to the pandemic, and the other one is if you are voting on essential minimum functions of a governing body. So it's been our opinion so far that voting on rezoning matters are not classified as essential minimum functions. However, that's something that we can reevaluate given that, the state statutes set the timing and the parameters for when public hearings have to be held and when votes have to be held, and we do owe answers to the developer. It's a very unique situation with multiple council members out, and they're not here only because they're quarantined and they're trying to abide by CDC guidelines. So that's something that I told Council President Shaw I would look into further and see if it's an option under the legal guidance that we have now and the governor's proclamations thus far.
As I came to the meeting tonight, I follow Auburn City and their meeting. They're having a city council meeting tonight via Zoom on Facebook Live. I watched them meet. Their planning commission met. They voted on zoning issues. So I'm seeing Tuscaloosa meeting online, and so that is why I'm sending those things.
Okay, great. We'll be happy to take a look at their agendas, and then I can reach out to their city attorneys too and see if the council itself is taking up rezoning issues, what is the rationale for doing that, and how they're classifying that as a minimum function. And then I will let Council President Shaw know, and then we can make our decisions from there.
So would you be agreeable to, well, all of us agreeable to continuing this to the 28th, whether we vote via Zoom or we're able to meet here in person?
Y'all think that's the better course?
You don't get a vote. If we don't give him a vote, we can't give you a vote.
Look,
Well, they might be watching.
Yeah, I would guess they're both watching, but they can't vote. Well,
No.
No.
Gotta be that
the
person.
proxy can't.
well, I think the other thing, Ms. Bartlett, we can work on that. If we can't, we need to have a vote on the 28th. This was a big room. If we need to figure out a way to quarantine an area of somebody, if one of you guys gets sick, in this next wave. There's got to be a way to do it. I don't.
Can't bring Saban back that way. I don't know how we're going to do it.
Saban came back once. He sure did.
You know,
He just didn't come back for Auburn. He didn't need to.
so then on the 28th, if one of you have been exposed, say I don't feel safe coming, then it's like where, at what point? And I don't think
No.
I don't know. I mean,
Have it next week. I mean, I just don't know. I wish we could vote through Zoom. I really do. And it's an important enough a vote. I respect each individual member's differing opinions on this issue. But I want to have a good public hearing. I don't think continuing constantly is the thing to do on the public hearings, because I looked at the minutes and BB was, I mean, there were no comments at the last public hearing. There were people here to speak, and if we could have
They
that.
spoke during public comments, but yeah. But, well, I think it's promising if you found that information about Auburn and Tuscaloosa that Megan could research for the 28th. That sounds really promising. So,
right now there's a motion on the table to continue to the 28th. Do we have a second, or do we not have a second? Going once, twice, no second.
Okay, no,
So we're going to go to a vote tonight.
But somebody's got to make a motion.
Somebody's got to make a motion for us to vote on this tonight if we want to vote on it. So will somebody make a motion
or if there's no motion.
or no motion? What happens if there's
I
a
would
no motion?
recommend that we at least get a motion and see if there is a second to take up the matter and take a vote this evening.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, I recommend that someone make a motion and then we see if there is a second, and then if there's a second, then the city clerk will ask for a roll call vote.
If there's not a second,
If there's not a second, then the motion fails.
Right.
Let's
the
make a
motion fails. It's not that it's postponed.
Right.
Okay. So if we vote to continue the 28th, and there are still people that can't be here, and we can't vote via Zoom, would we vote anyway?
I think we vote on the 28th. I think we vote tonight. I think we either vote tonight or the 28th, and this, I mean.
Because it
It's
does not
the
seem
same-
right
it's
to
gonna be
keep
the same
dragging it
problem.
out.
It's the same piece of property. It is what it, I mean, either we're going to vote, you already know, everybody here knows how everybody's going to vote. So let's vote. Let's either vote tonight or on the 28th. If y'all want Teddy and John here, it's totally up to y'all. I mean, it's whatever y'all want to do. I'm in, but I'm just saying it. We'll vote tonight. We'll vote on the 28th. Right now, there's not a motion on the table, so I'm asking for a motion.
May I ask what the hesitation is in continuing it to the 28th?
We're at the same point we're at now. I mean, if we can't vote,
Mm-hmm.
somebody else is sick, if somebody else is still recovering.
Mm-hmm. But we potentially have a chance for the Zoom, possibly, if we've got other jurisdictions that are doing it. Is that worth?
That would be my hope. That's what I advocated for tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We can't guarantee that. I don't want the premise of we can do that on the 28th, and if
Right.
we can't do it,
Understand.
somebody else is out. I don't want anybody upset saying, "Oh, I got duped. I got hoodooed." So
would we just keep continuing it until we could get every member here able?
I don't think so. I think we vote either tonight or on the 28th. My opinion is we vote on it. That's what we're elected to do, is vote on stuff, not keep kicking the can. So me as council president says, let's vote on something. Either on the continuance or on the ordinance.
Well, I think if you're enough people are pausing about the project's merits, then as staff, and we'd ask that you continue the item. Might be helpful. Councilmember Seifert is a planning commission rep, he was part of that planning commission discussion. It might be helpful to be able to have him here. I don't know what Megan's research would show, but I've had projects continue longer than this, so not that it's something we want to do, but we do have unusual circumstances with the situation that we're in right now.
You can second my motion. You can second my motion. The chair can second. I make a motion, we continue this.
they're going to vote.
It
I
doesn't
second
matter how-
Mara's motion to.
Okay, just to
continue
move on.
The 28th.
Thank you. Just to move on.
Is there any discussion on that?
Her names.
I have a question for Megan. I think my biggest concern about the Barnett's Crossing project is our ability to enforce what we thought we were approving at the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of provisions that are in the covenants that do not show up in the development agreement.
Okay.
By necessity, you can't do certain things. I understand what your limitations are with federal housing, and there are only certain things you can put in the development agreement, but there's certain things you can put in the covenant. If you had more time, could you give us some more information, or at least give me more information in terms of our ability to make sure that the covenants in the HOA agreement would adequately reflect what our intention was when that unanimously passed planning?
Absolutely. I can get you a memo on enforceability of the development agreement, enforceability under the zoning regulations, and then also some additional information on covenants and how cities interact with HOAs in reviewing and enforcing covenants.
Okay.
We could also ask the developer, if you're interested, to have their attorney speak to this item as well, if you would like.
Okay.
Is he here tonight?
The developer, I do not see him.
She's here.
Oh, I know. So there's a developer rep, but Mr. Miller, who was here before, was not able to stay for the duration. He had to leave for something.
The other thing, Mary Beth, is are you able, I know Ms. Bartlett was asking for the numbers on that rooftop. Would we be able to have a firm number of that too, or not, or close?
Could give it a college try.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean,
two developments that are up.
yeah, yes. I mean, we do.
What that comes to,
Yeah.
because that'll be over 20.
Yeah, there might be some footnotes because there's a difference between, when a project is approved versus C of O, but we'll work on getting you a good number.
Okay. All right.
All right. So we got a motion and a second. I think discussion is over for continuance of this ordinance to the 28th. That's what's on the table right now. Can I get the vote, please?
Councilmember Robleski.
Aye.
Council President Shaw.
Aye.
Councilmember Spears.
Aye.
Councilmember Powell. Councilmember Bartlett.
Aye.
Councilmember Denzine.
Aye.
Councilmember Seifert.
All right.
Thank you.
Passes.
The next item is proposed ordinance number 2020-273. And this is also a rezoning request to a cluster zoning for 39 acres on the north side of Huntsville Browns Ferry. This item was continued from the last meeting. I think we've talked about this quite a bit. And I'm happy to, I don't have any new information, or there haven't been any changes to the request, I guess I will say. And so I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them, either before or after your public hearing comments.
All right, I'll open up the public hearing.
President Shaw, I do have the question from Ms. Jackson, my constituent. Same question as before. The Planning Commission vote, how did each Planning Commission member vote when it was before them?
This Planning Commission vote, this project was recommended for approval, and it was, 2 members did not support the rezoning, and I'm not sure we had a full quorum that night, so it might have been a 6-2 vote. It was either a 6-2 vote or a 7-2 vote. We might have had somebody absent, but we had 2 commissioners who didn't support the rezoning request.
And they were?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. 2 commissioners who didn't support the change to the West Side Master Plan, but on the zoning, it was 1 commissioner who didn't vote for it. And it was Commissioner Johnson didn't support the zoning request, but the other commissioners did support the zoning request.
But the 2 who voted no?
On the West Side Master Plan were Commissioner Johnson and Mike Potter, and then that was on the West Side Master Plan, and then on the zoning, Mike Potter did vote for the zoning.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Donnie?
Council, Donnie Spencer, 11369 Morris Drive, representing Deltina Development here tonight. Given all the discussion and the time that has passed on this first one, I respectfully ask you to consider that same motion for this particular project. I don't think that there's anyone here that can offer you any more than they already have. Just one footnote though, and a point of order, if you would, Councilman or Council President.
Yes, sir.
I see a trend, especially not just with COVID, but pre-COVID, of not only council people, but also planning commission members reading emails. In the public hearing format, we are required to come up here and state our name and address for the record, and I see that being ignored a lot of times on public comments being read by either county council members or commission members, just referring to someone by their last name or whatever. I believe that's a little bit out of order, and just ask that you consider that point of order when anyone in this forum is referring to emails, and those emails should be entered into the minutes so that there is a record of that public statement.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Bartlett, respectfully, your comment about the people here tonight. Yes, there are people here tonight. We appreciate their passion. They come given some of the things that they're either misinformed or just simply wrong. But just a footnote, the mayor talked about we being a city of 54,000 people tonight, and the people that have spoken tonight, both in email and on the record at this podium, don't even represent 1/1000th of the population here. So considering that as well, and yes, in my career, and I've been doing this 15 years now, never heard a single person step up to this microphone and go, yeah, I tell you what, I really like this development, come on, bring it on. Never does happen. The only folks that come to public hearings are the people who are opposed to something, and that's just the nature of it. But if you would, I respectfully ask that you all continue our item tonight as well.
Yes, sir.